welcome to Day 3 of Orange City Literature Fest 2020, organized by SGR Knowledge Foundation. I'm Anushi Jain, the anchor for this session. The topic for this session is how Indira Gandhi wrote the playbook for India's politics. For this session, we have our guest speaker, Ma'am Sagarika Ghose, who is one of India's most noted journalists, an acclaimed author and broadcaster. She has worked at Times of India, Outlook Magazine, and the Indian Express. She was a prime-time television news anchor on BBC World's Question Time India. She was a prime-time TV anchor and deputy editor of the TV news network CNN-IBN. She is the author of 2 novels, The Gin Drinkers and Blind Faith, as well as recently published best-selling biography of Indira Gandhi, Indira, India's most powerful Prime Minister. Slated for screen adaptation. Her latest book, Why Am I a Liberal? A Manifesto for Indians who believe in individual freedom. She has won numerous awards for journalism, including C.H. Mohammad Koya National Journalism Award, as well as Best Anchor Award from the Indian Television Academy. She has also been listed as one of the world's most famous women Rhodes Scholars. Ghosh is popular and widely read columnist, and at present she is consulting editor with the Times of India. It's a pleasure to welcome you, ma'am, to this session. In the next 40 minutes, ma'am will be in a conversation with Sir Rukshad Bhagwagar, who is an entrepreneur. He started off from a garage with 2 carpenters when he was still in his early 20s. Sir has established a business which in the 80s would not have got the volume he had sold it just in the city. I have this love for furniture, and this region has always been known for its teak. I combine these two to create objects which fortunately are being appreciated across the world. This is what he says. It's an honor to welcome you, sir, as the moderator for this session. And I warmly welcome you both to the session. And now I hand it over to you, Sir Rukshad.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anushi. Thank you. Sagarika, welcome and wonderful to see you. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks a lot, Rukshad. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, it's. I'll tell you, to talk about one formidable woman with another accomplished woman is a little bit intimidating for me, I must tell you. But I'll put up a show for my sex. We have a great topic today. We have a great topic today about a woman we all think we know. You know, Indira Gandhi strode the Indian political scene like a colossus. But time and myth have blurred our knowledge and understanding of her. You, Sagarika, on the other hand, have written her biography, Indira Gandhi, India's most powerful Prime Minister, you call her, or you call the book. And we would love to, over the next 45 minutes or so, get a better understanding of this most fascinating and enigmatic woman, the subject of your book, and get to know her a little better, thanks to all the research and work you have done. And if I'm not wrong, I see the book we're talking about right behind you.
Yes, so this is the book, Indira, India's most powerful Prime Minister.
Wonderful. That's a lovely picture of her.
Yes, it's a very nice picture. I think it's quite, as you said, thoughtful, but as well as quite forbidding as well, slightly.
Very forbidding. Very forbidding. I can imagine a few generals quaking in their boots when they saw her, looking at them like that. So, Sagarika, we have lots to cover in very little time. So I'm not going to waste time on any more introductions. I will go straight to asking you a little about how you connected with her. So I want to know is that what intrigued you or fascinated you about Indira Gandhi enough for you to make her the subject of your book, India's most powerful Prime Minister. And why do you call her so?
Right. First of all, thank you so much to the Orange City Literature Festival for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I can't think of a nicer way to spend a Sunday evening in lockdown than chatting about books and ideas. And Rukshad, thanks a lot for moderating this discussion as well. So Yes, Indira Gandhi. Actually, I wrote the book because I was commissioned to do the book by my publisher Juggernaut, and they wanted to bring out a biography of Indira Gandhi to coincide with her 100th birth anniversary. She was born in 19 November 1917, and
Mhm.
2017 would be 100 years of Indira Gandhi. So I was actually commissioned to do the biography, and in fact, when I was commissioned, I thought, I like you, I thought, why Indira Gandhi? I mean, do we really need to know more about her? And you know, uh, but I was excited to get this project, and then as I went on researching and exploring the life of this very fascinating, multi-layered individual, I realized that it's so important to bring alive Indira for a new generation, and particularly for a new generation of young women. Who perhaps have a relationship with our first woman prime minister. So what I did in the book, and when you read the book, you'll see, and I hope readers will read the book after this discussion. I've written a series of letters to her through the book, trying to ask her questions and delve into her mind, like a kind of dialogue that a young woman today might have with the first woman prime minister. So for me, it was a sort of terrifically enriching experience, and I got to know a lot about her, and interestingly, Rukshad, I discovered when I was researching that everybody I spoke to remembers exactly what they were doing when Indira Gandhi was assassinated. It's funny, they remember exactly.
Absolutely.
People remember it to the detail. Like my mother-in-law said, "Oh, I remember I was getting my birthday cake." And somebody told me, "Oh, I remember I was just coming home in the bus and I saw it scrolled across the Times of India building." Everyone remembers it to a T. It's like time froze for
Like,
everybody.
like that Don McLean song, the day the music died.
Yeah,
Do you remember
yeah.
the feel? Yeah.
Really, and in her death, I think transformed her into a martyr. She could have just been another politician, but that assassination, that dramatic assassination, sort of made her into a kind of a cult figure. That Jim Morrison song, "Death gives us angels wings." So it really made her into a cult figure. And the reason why I called her the most powerful prime minister is because, she was incredibly expert at understanding and wielding power. She knew power, she understood power, and she wielded it in a way that left even her father, Nehru, flat on the mat. She really knew how to play politics. She was a natural politician. She could sleepwalk her way into politics. She played politics, played power politics with the ease of someone who breathes and lives politics. So I called her powerful because she used power, embodied power. And there was a time, Ruksha, that you remember and I remember, because we are old enough. I mean, not that you're old, but I'm old. But but in the sense that we remember a time when Indira Gandhi was like a goddess. In 1971, after the 1971 war, and first there was the Garibi Hatao election when she swept to power, and then the 1971 Bangladesh war. She was hailed as Durga. She was literally at the height of her power. So that's why I called her most powerful.
Sagarika, I also wanted to know that being a woman biographer, did that give you a different perspective or insight? Do you think?
Yes,
Maybe a better understanding or sensitivity.
absolutely, because as a woman, there are so many things
And I think,
that you can relate
hello.
to. With Indira Gandhi. Women politicians, I have been covering over a while, over a long time. And, I think women politicians tend to overcompensate
Hello.
their personalities. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Yeah, there you are. So,
But
I
your
think
sound,
women
I can't
politicians.
hear you.
Oh, is that fine?
Okay.
So, as a woman, I think I related to her very strongly. And I think women readers relate to her very strongly. And women related to her very strongly. She had a huge constituency among women. She was Indira Amma, she was Indira Ma, she was, Mata. She also played women's roles in public. She was the wife, the widow, the mother, the daughter. She played all these roles in public. And I think after many years of covering women politicians, whether it's a Jayalalitha, whether it's a Mayawati, whether it's a Mamta Banerjee, each of these politicians adopt a kind of persona. I call it the Kali avatar, a designer insanity. They have to be a little bit mad, a little bit eccentric to be taken seriously and to strike fear in people and to get their voices heard, and to be taken and to be actually to be
Yeah,
actually
can't hear
respected.
her. Can't hear her at all.
And,
Sagarika. Can't hear Sagarika.
oh,
Can't hear you. Yeah. Can you just look into it? There seems to be a technical issue. I can't hear Sagarika.
can you hear me?
No, I don't think it's internet. Hello. Yeah, I can't hear Sagarika. I can see her, but I can't hear her.
Oh,
Sir, there seems to be a
Can you hear me?
network issue from your side actually, because I can hear ma'am and you very clearly.
I don't know. I can see her.
should I repeat the answer?
But no
Or?
sound.
Yes, ma'am. You can continue, I guess. Sir, while this technical issue is being looked at, should we continue the session, please?
So should I just keep talking?
Yeah. Shall I rejoin?
Yeah, sure. Just drop it and rejoin it.
Okay. So, ma'am, I will request you to actually continue to answer once sir is back online.
Okay, so should I repeat the whole answer?
I am not sure how far sir how much has sir heard, but until he's back, I have a question from the audience. We can actually answer that right now, since we have time.
Okay.
The question is that one of the audience members would love to know if you would love to hear some insights on the relationship between Indira Gandhi and Sam Manekshaw.
That was very interesting because, when it came to the Bangladesh war, Indira Gandhi was very keen to press ahead. And, the Bangladesh war was a moment of great glory for Indira Gandhi. It was a good time for the Indian Army. And the Indian Army, after the war, was all over the world, like conduct not only on the battlefield but off the battlefield. But she had a run-in with Sam Manekshaw, who was then the chief of army staff, because he delayed the invasion of East Pakistan, because he said that it's not right for us to go in when the monsoon is on. We have to wait. We have to wait till the weather conditions. And she was getting more and more impatient. But, they actually had a very respectful relationship. Sam Manekshaw would often say that the Prime Minister has a long nose, but my nose is even longer.
Yeah.
They had a mutually respectful relationship. They got on very well. And the Bangladesh war, I would say, was a period in which the Indian government and the Indian Army worked really in perfect concert, because Indira Gandhi traveled the world. She mobilized political opinion, she mobilized diplomatic opinion, and the whole world was against India. Everybody was against India. The Americans were against India. The British were not taking India seriously. Nobody was standing with India. The only country that had India at its was the USSR.
Hello.
And she tied up the Indo-Soviet Friendship Treaty before the war. But
I can't really hear. Just
so, even though the whole world ranged against her, and
1 minute. I'll just
all world leaders really not taking this conflict seriously, in December 1971, Indira Gandhi invaded Pakistan.
नेटवर्क तो पूरा है अभी ट्राई कर रहा हूँ
with Generals Manekshaw, leading our army. And I think since that war, and the war was over in 14 days before Nixon even had time to react, and the 7th Fleet was sent steaming into the Indian Ocean. But there, patrolling the Indian Ocean, was INS Vikramaditya. It was ready to take on any kind of threat. There was peace on the western border. So it was a war which was perfectly timed. It was diplomatically very well organized, and it was over in 14 days. It was over in 14 days. And when it was very dramatic when the Bangladesh war ended and Indira Gandhi came into the parliament to announce that we have, that the operation is over, and I would like to welcome the new state of Bangladesh, the new nation of Bangladesh. And the entire parliament stood up and clapped. And it was a standing ovation. And Vajpayee, Vajpayee, even though he denied it later, he called her Durga. He said, this is Chandi Durga. And so this was a great moment for him. And he owed it, a lot of it, to the very canny and very hard-headed military leadership shown by Sam Manekshaw.
Okay, so
Okay, welcome to Rukshad, sir. If you're now, the panel is again in your hands.
so what have I missed?
There are trials of Zoom conversations.
I tell you. So Sagarika, just as it's getting really interesting.
Yeah.
So I was asking you, and I don't know if you finished that answering that, whether you being a woman biographer gave you any better understanding or sensitivity of her and a different perspective or insight into Indira.
Absolutely. I think I think generally women respond well to women, so to investigating other women and exploring her personality. I could see the different phases in which her personal often impinged on her political. When she was a daughter, she was a certain kind of politician. When she was a wife, when she was a mother, there were so many intersections between her political life and her personal life that it was very rewarding for me as a woman to try and explore those. And Rukshad, as we were talking earlier, I think every woman politician in India has to cultivate a certain designer insanity, what I call a designer madness. Because if you're a little bit insane at strategic moments, people take you really seriously because they think, oh my God, kuch nahi karo yaar, ye kuch bhi kar sakti hai. So I think the thing is that you have to cultivate that slight edge of unpredictability, that slight edge of being the virago. And I think she was very much a virago. She was unpredictable, and she embodied what Jayalalitha. Actually, she was very admiring of Jayalalitha. Jayalalitha was a young politician when Indira Gandhi spotted her, and she had a lot of good words to say about Jayalalitha. And Jayalalitha was once asked in an interview that, why are you so forbidding? Why are you so stern? And Jayalalitha said, well, if I'm not stern, if I'm not angry, people won't take me seriously. So if you're a tiny woman in a sari, you're likely to get looked over, and people might not take you seriously, but they'll take you seriously if you're mad. If you're mad, they will take you seriously. So if you're a little bit crazy, people will be scared of you, and they will watch what they're saying. So I think women tend to cultivate this Kali avatar, and they all do it. Mamta Banerjee, Mayawati, Mehbooba Mufti, they all do it. So so that's what I found very interesting about her. But there are 4 what ifs that I want to talk about, that I asked, that bothered me in the book. Like, what if Feroz Gandhi, her husband, hadn't died when he did? What if Lal Bahadur Shastri hadn't died when he did? What if she had never lifted the emergency? And what if she had not been assassinated? I explored these 4 questions in my book. And the answer to the first question, which relates to the point about her being a woman, is, if Feroz Gandhi hadn't died in 1960, it really, it's an open question whether she would have even entered politics. Because, Feroz was a very talented and dynamic politician. He won huge victories in 1952 and 1957 from Raebareli. He was a natural politician. He spoke multiple languages. He spoke fluent Hindustani. He was a robust, plump, talkative, pink, sort of, pink complexioned, sort of, big eater. He used to drink and smoke. He was a real people's man, and he's born and
So
brought up.
that's quite a bombshell. Are you trying to tell me that he would have been the heir apparent to Nehru if it hadn't
No,
been
no, no,
for?
no. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that until he died, she was very much his wife. She was Firoz's wife. I mean, she was as a politician. She was nowhere in the picture till 1959, when of course she became Congress president.
So let me take you back to her early life, because
Yeah.
let's to tell me about what you know of her early life and the illustrious family that surrounded her. How did that shape her, and what was it like growing up in Anand Bhavan? And most importantly, do you have any insight about her relationship with her father and how that evolved?
Yeah,
Because he seemed to be the
that's a
single most towering figure.
Yes, that's a very interesting question. I think one of the things that led me to explore this was when she went to Shanti Niketan to study when she was 16 or 17 years old. She said, all this time in my life, I've been a very bitter, angry person. And she was angry and bitter because, it's very interesting because we think about Indira Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru as a very close father-daughter relationship. He wrote letters
That's
to
right.
her. He doted on her. But actually, when you explore the relationship, it was rather tense, and it was it was a rather difficult relationship. Nehru was severely disappointed in Indira Gandhi because Indira Gandhi was not intellectual. She was not brilliant like him. Nehru was a brilliant mind. He had written Discovery of India in jail. He had passed out. He had graduated from Cambridge. He was a Harrovian. She failed in Oxford. She couldn't pass her exams. She of course she came away on the grounds of ill health, but the first year exam she was unable to clear, and she always remained intellectually a disappointment to her father. The other thing is that Nehru was very, very physically fit. He detested any form of illness, and he detested any form of weakness, and she was sickly. She was ill a lot. She was thin, and this again used to make Nehru very impatient. He used to tell her, why, you must do physical exercise. He used to tell her, write a letter saying, don't be a ladylike Bengali woman. Like this Bengali who are lying around in their saris. Say, don't wear saris. A sari is not a working person's dress. A sari is a lounger's costume. I'm
Wow.
wearing a sari, so I don't think he would approve. But Nehru was very impatient with all this. He wanted her to ride horses, be intellectual, be brilliant, pass and all, flying colors. He was a very, very demanding father. And I think she kind of rebelled against this. But also the other very interesting part of her childhood was that she was deeply close to her mother, Kamala Nehru.
Kamala.
And Kamala Nehru married into the Nehru family and was completely a misfit because the Nehrus were brilliant. There was Jawaharlal, there was Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, there was Motilal Nehru himself. They were brilliant, they were accomplished, they were beautiful looking, they were very sophisticated. And when Kamala came into the family, she was made fun of and they mocked her that she couldn't speak English. There was an incident where Vijay Lakshmi Pandit said, we are going to see a movie, but it's in English, so she can't come because she won't understand.
Cruel,
Indira
Varma.
Gandhi, yeah, they were horrible to Kamala. And Kamala was very, very beautiful, but again, very sickly. And Nehru used to also make his closeness to his sister very apparent. Vijay Lakshmi Pandit. Vijay Lakshmi Pandit is the villain of the story in her early childhood. She hated her aunt, and her aunt did not like her. And when she was 14, she overheard her aunt say that, oh, Indira is ugly and stupid. And this line stayed with her for the rest of her life. So she was very much, in a way, her mother's protector in that household. She was her mother's guardian because her mother was frail. Kamala didn't speak English. Kamala was not sophisticated. And Indira stood as her mother's guardian against her father and against her dazzling, the dazzling Nehru family. So it was a tense equation between her and her father. Her mother is the person who really was her soulmate. But then Kamala Nehru, as you know, died very early on. But you know, it's very.
But she did have admirers in her youth as well, didn't she? I mean,
Oh, she was
I remember you saying something about her getting on famously with Homi Bhabha, which I don't think many
Yes.
people would know about.
Indira Gandhi used to get on very well with Homi Bhabha. You know, Indira Gandhi, as I said, she always had a terrible relationship with Vijay Lakshmi Pandit. And after independence in 1948, when Vijay Lakshmi Pandit was the ambassador, the ambassador to the United States, she invited Jawaharlal Nehru, then Prime Minister, to visit the US, and she
Mhm.
didn't want Indira Gandhi to come. So, but Indira Gandhi forced her way into that trip because she was also ambitious and she wanted to go to America with her father. And her aunt left her out of many of the functions, you know, many of the ceremonial functions and many of the dinners. And then Indira Gandhi was left out. So the person who used to take her out for lunches and dinners was Homi Bhabha.
Wow,
And
that's
so yeah, it's very interesting. I mean so you know, and a lot of people have suggested that their relationship was quite close.
whoa. So that's
Yeah,
something that's never heard,
yeah.
not
Maybe
never heard of
maybe that
before.
explains her interest in science.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what about her husband Firoz and their marriage? How did he influence her, and what role did he play in her story? Um, could you tell us a little about that?
Yes, I mean, I think that you know, Indira Gandhi was a person who loved what she didn't like. Her
Mhm,
loves were different from her likes. You know, she
mhm.
loved things that she didn't like. So she loved Firoz Gandhi, but she didn't like him. She loved Indian democracy, and she said she loved the Indian free press, but she didn't like Indian democracy, and she didn't like the free press. So,
Uh,
so her loves and likes were very different.
uh,
So, in a sense, they had a very turbulent relationship. And I think
mhm,
Firoz was a very, you know, he was brilliant actually. He spoke, as I said, many different languages.
mhm,
He started off originally as a kind of devotee of Kamala Nehru, and he was
mhm,
deeply admiring of Kamala Nehru, and he was then deeply admiring of Jawaharlal Nehru as well. And he was at the LSE, studying at the LSE in London when she was in Oxford. And guess where they used to meet? They used to meet in the flat of Parveshwar Narayan Haksar, P.N. Haksar, who later became her principal secretary. And P.N. Haksar has written that he used to cook for them because he was a very good cook. And he used to make Punjabi Kashmiri goshtaba and Kashmiri, you know, the wazwan. He was very good at cooking Kashmiri food. And he used to make this for Firoz and Indira. And Haksar has written that there was no secret about the sleeping arrangements in Firoz's home.
wow,
So,
so
I
that's
mean, they were living together effectively.
pretty. For
Yeah,
that time, it
I
must have
mean,
been
I think they
pretty.
were quite open about all this. I think this was
Yeah.
the 1940s the Indian independence movement and all of that. And so she started off with a very blissful relationship with Firoz, but then things with Firoz soured pretty quickly because you know there was a big gap in their status, you know, in a way. She was Nehru's
Mm,
daughter.
yeah.
She was at the head of the table. He was sort of nobody. You know, it is very interesting that in 1947, when there was the big grand banquet, the Independence Day banquet, and Lord and Lady Mountbatten, that is, Edwina Mountbatten and
Yeah.
Lord Mountbatten, they had this huge banquet to celebrate India's independence. And so Indira Gandhi was placed next to Jawaharlal Nehru, right at the center of the table.
Therefore,
And Firoz was way down the table, sitting next to the press attaché of Lord Mountbatten. You know, so it was clear that to the Mountbattens, Firoz was a non-entity, and they probably thought that who was this person she had married? I mean, it was
mm,
clearly
yeah.
someone way below her, you know. And then there was a function, there was a Congress Party function in which Nehru was sitting on stage with Indira Gandhi, and he kept saying, you know, we as members of the Congress should not involve our family members in the party. We should not get our family members in the party. So Firoz was sitting right in the back and he said, well, I didn't bring my wife here. You did. So you know, there was a tension. There was
Yeah.
tension. And you know, Firoz was suffocated by Nehru's personality cult. Actually, he was very admiring of Nehru, but he was also very suffocated by the personality cult. And I think that the inequality of their situations got to him.
Well,
You know,
I've read books that suggested that he sort of he did more than just admire Kamala. There are rumors to suggest that he was romantically inclined towards her.
I studied, I explored this in detail, but my research doesn't show that there was any kind of affair or anything like that, because that would have been impossible at that time, because they lived extremely public lives. Kamala and Jawaharlal were in a very public situation. There were suggestions of this because Firoz used to be constantly in their house. He used to constantly be visiting them and hanging around them like a groupie. But he sort of admired Nehru as much as he admired Kamala. There were even some rumors and some posters about them. Posters of Firoz and Kamala appeared in Allahabad, and Nehru is supposed to have told Meenu Masani that, Meenu, can you imagine this young boy is supposed to be in love with Kamala? Can you imagine anyone being in love with Kamala? So Meenu Masani turned around and said, of course I can. Kamala is beautiful. I myself could have fallen for Kamala. And at which point apparently Nehru glared at him. So, but I think that, it was very much a sort of an admiring relationship. But Firoz was a ladies' man. He had a lot of affairs. He was a faithless husband. He was unfaithful to Indira Gandhi. He had a particularly intense relationship with the wife of a Lucknow politician called Mrs. Ali Zahir. He was deeply in love with her, and it was a very intense relationship. And Nehru actually had to send his friend Rafi Ahmed Kidwai to Lucknow to actually get Firoz to call off the affair, because it was genuinely a big affair. So Firoz, I think, rebelled against the cult of Nehru and the cult of Indira by having this kind of free living, wild lifestyle. He used to be very good with his hands. He was a very good carpenter. So he used to keep teaching his sons how to make things, toys and planes and trains. So once somebody asked him, Firoz, why do you keep teaching your boys to make these things out of hand? He said, because I'm a poor man, but they have a poor father but a very rich mother. So if their mother forgets about them, they can always learn carpentry. They can become carpenters.
Well, Sanjay did tinker a lot with the Maruti.
He tried to make a car. But
so let me take you, Sagarika, let me take you a little away from her personal life now, a little bit to her political side of things. She went through some great triumphs as Prime Minister, didn't she? Some of the greatest triumphs. The Bangladesh 1971 war, the scientific gains that you were mentioning earlier, in nuclear space area specifically, and a popularity and a popularity that I don't think has been surpassed till date. So tell us a little about her triumphs before we talk about the disaster.
Yeah, she was independent India's first personality cult. She was what today is we called an elected autocrat. I think Mr. Modi is very busy trying to be Indira Gandhi. I always say that he should call himself Narendra Modi, because he's trying to.
That's very clever. That's very clever.
It's very hard to imitate Indira Gandhi, because she was the original personality cult, But I think her personality was north, south, east, west. You go to the south, you go to the north, east. I don't think Mr. Modi is as much of a personality cult as she is, but she was at the very top of her powers in the early 70s. So when she came into politics, remember, she was called a Gungi Guriya, because she was very shy, she was very withdrawn, she couldn't speak in parliament. And parliament at that time, was full of these big orators,
the big daddies.
Hiren Mukherjee, Nath Pai, there were these big swashbuckling speakers, and she couldn't say a word. She was tongue-tied, she used to stammer, she was very shy. Lohia called her, "Arey, ye to Gungi Guriya hai." And the Congress, the party, which brought her in as Prime Minister, thought she would be a puppet in their hands. They thought she would, be the figurehead, because when Shastri died, they brought her in as Prime Minister. They said, let Nehru's daughter become Prime Minister. And we, the party bosses, because at that time there were these very powerful party bosses, Kamaraj, Morarji Desai. They said, we will control. They were called the syndicate.
That's right.
We will control the party, and she will just be the face over there. Well, they were really wrong.
I'm so surprised.
She finished them completely, and she split the party. in the elections of 1967, actually, they were all decimated. Kamaraj, Atulya Ghosh, the syndicate lost. She won. She split the party. She annihilated the old guard. She brought all the young leftist-minded people with her, and she took over the party and became Indira, the leader of the Congress.
And
So,
then the war, and then the war came along.
so the Gungi Guriya became goddess Durga.
Yeah.
And before the old men could do anything, she was ruling over them. So she played politics extremely cleverly. She nationalized the banks. When she nationalized banks, that was a way of actually building her own personality cult, building herself as a kind of messiah of the poor, that I've nationalized these banks in favor of the poor. Because, Inder Malhotra, who I interviewed, was a journalist in 1969, and he went out to interview the people who were dancing on the streets when she nationalized banks. And she said, and Inder Malhotra asked these rickshaw pullers and taxi drivers and people who were small shopkeepers, and why are you dancing? Why are you celebrating? That they said, because banks have been nationalized. So he said, but have you ever been inside a bank? They said no. They said, do you have a bank account? They said no. So he said, then why are you celebrating? They said, because Indira Gandhi has taught the rich a lesson and the poor have triumphed. So, she became this messiah of the poor. And she became this populist heroine, messiah of the poor. And then when she went into the elections of 1971 with Garibi Hatao, she was the heroine of the poor, and she streaked to a massive win. So once she won that big win, the old guard, everybody else within the Congress was annihilated, and she became the unquestioned leader. Having said that, Rukshad, I want to say that she was a deeply destructive politician. Because she, in many ways, destroyed the Congress party, because she made it entirely about her family. She made it entirely about herself and dependent on her. She bypassed all the institutions. She bypassed the institutions of the of cabinet, of judiciary, of the press, of the legislature. Sounds familiar, right? That's
the ring of familiarity there. Yeah.
So, so she bypassed all these institutions and became just the supreme leader herself, So in that sense, I think she was India's first elected autocrat, and she was India's first personality cult. So she was a tremendously expert politician, but she was no Democrat. She was not a Democrat. She was not someone who would accept any kind of challenge to her authority. And she deeply believed that her family, her own blood family,
has some kind of divine right.
Yeah, had the divine right to rule. There's no doubt about this ever entered her mind.
Amazing.
No doubt about this.
Being the leader of the world's largest democracy. To have with a thought process like that.
Yeah, she was Nehru's daughter, and she would rule.
And then she won the Bangladesh War, and then she gave away most of the gains, her critics said. Do you want
at
to
the
offer
Shimla Agreement, yes, at the Shimla Agreement, she was not as tough with Bhutto as she could have been. She could have really pushed hard for a permanent settlement in Kashmir. She could have pushed hard for the border, but Bhutto completely backtracked on the Shimla Agreement when he went back to Pakistan. So she gave away too much, perhaps, but then by then she was by then at home. She was, as I said, she was goddess Durga.
Yeah.
After the Bangladesh war, Indira Gandhi was, really, you couldn't touch her. I mean, the Congress swept through the 1972 elections. There were a large number of women, girl babies who were born in 1972. And I've got a list of the, I've got a statistic on this. Millions of them were named Indira.
Indira, wonderful.
Yeah, they were named Indira.
So how did we go from there then to the dark days of the emergency? What brought about that, and how do you think that emergency changed her?
She went from zenith to nadir in 3 years, just from the right to the top to the bottom in 3 short years. Well, what happened was basically, after the Bangladesh war, she became extremely arrogant. She became very full of herself, and then conditions in India became drastic. Rains failed, oil shocks, food riots, all kinds of riots and chaos and food shortages, and there was tumult in India for those 3 years. 72 to 74 were terrible years for India. And the final blow was in 1975 when the Allahabad High Court unseated her, when it said that her election was invalid, and she could no longer remain prime minister. And that, I think, was the tipping point. She thought she was a victim of a conspiracy, and she clamped the emergency on 25th June.
And that changed her, you believe, I think, from your book in many ways.
That case, at that time, I think she became deeply paranoid. She became very suspicious. She became she thought people were going to kill her. She was convinced people were going to kill her. The only ally she had at that time was her son, Sanjay Gandhi. She
Yes.
said that Sanjay was saving me from people. She felt that she was going to be murdered. At that time, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was murdered, around the same time in the early 70s. And she always felt there was a very strong feeling within her that what happened to Mujib would happen to her. So she was very, very paranoid. And from 19, I would say, post-emergency, she was never the same Indira, although she came back to power in 1980. But post-1980, she was a completely different person. The
And
Congress...
she depended more and more on her son after that,
She
didn't she?
depended more
It
and
was
more-
a nepotism at its worst, wasn't
Yes,
it?
at its worst. Nepotism at its worst. Sanjay was the prince of darkness during the emergency. He was the power center. He was creating his own political party with the Youth Congress. He was creating his own political ecosystem. But then, when he died also in 1980, she had nobody. She
Yeah.
was alone. So 1980 to 1984, until she died, it was a period of complete, the politics of what I call the politics of survival and
Yeah.
politics of degradation. As I said, if she hadn't been assassinated, that's one of the what ifs I asked in the book. If she hadn't been assassinated, I don't think the Congress would have won the 1985 elections.
True.
They would have.
So let me take you away now from the politics back to a bit of a personal side. And there are a lot of Nagpurians on this
Yeah.
format, and we all love a bit of scandal and gossip.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you about the sort of the scandals and affairs that have been talked about her. We know about Mathai and Dinesh
but
Singh
Mathai-
and Yogesh Dhirendra Brahmachari. So
Yeah.
you have to share some light
Well,
on that.
I've written about Mathai a lot, and I found that Mathai has written a book. He's written an autobiography,
Yeah.
and allegedly that one chapter in the autobiography, which is an account of it's a very steamy sort of pornographic chapter about his relations with Indira Gandhi and how they how they had sex and they would go driving together and all that. But it's impossible to tell whether this chapter is a figment of Mathai's imagination or whether it actually happened, because it was not published. It's available online. It's called She.
Mhm.
And it's being circulated online, and I read it, and it's the most sort of extremely vulgar, very, very lurid kind of things written about Indira Gandhi. But whether or not it happened or whether it didn't happen, there's no way of knowing, because the publisher, Narendra Kumar, who I spoke to, said that when he got the manuscript, he didn't get this chapter. He just got whatever he published. So he said, I don't know about this chapter. Maybe it was there, maybe it was not there, but it was never published.
And what about Dhirendra Brahmachari? He was the one that was most spoken of.
He referred to Dhirendra Brahmachari as a handsome man. She told Prabhu Jayakar that there's this very handsome yogi, and he's got very good muscles and he's got long hair. So she was quite admiring of him. But it's impossible to understand whether they actually had an affair, because as Natwar Singh told me, when you're prime minister, you've got security guys under your bed. You've got security literally breathing down your neck.
I can imagine.
It's very difficult to carry out an affair. So, but she was a very good yoga exponent. I mean, she did yoga every day. She couldn't stand on her head like Nehru. Nehru used to do the Shirsasana. And he used to often tell her, why can't you do the Shirsasana? She could never do it, but she used to do yoga every day. So she had a lot of closeness with Dhirendra Brahmachari. But, I think there were rumors about Dinesh Singh.
That's right.
The minister in her early cabinet. She certainly enjoyed the company of handsome, intelligent men, and there's no doubt about that. She loved being admired. Love being complimented.
So
And
let's Sagarika, we're running out of time to tell me. So let's quickly recap on her legacy. What do you think? What have we learned from her? What has she left us with, and how should we remember her?
we should remember Indira Gandhi as a great patriot, as a courageous and tough leader. We should also remember her as someone who did a lot of damage to India's democracy. She was someone who damaged India's institutions. She destroyed, in my opinion, the Congress party. She began the process of destruction. But while she was a very controversial, very destructive politician, she was, as I say, a staunch patriot, a very courageous woman, and she was an extremely fascinating and multi layered and very attractive person.
This is really been, I think you've just whetted our appetites.
Yes.
The story seems to, just keep getting us more and more intrigued and more involved. So
Yeah.
tell us, how do we learn more? How do we get our hands on that book of yours?
So this is my book, and it's called Indira, India's Most Powerful Prime Minister, and you can get it on Amazon. It's from Juggernaut Publishers, and I think it's even available on Kindle if you have Kindle. Do I have time to read an extract or not? We're out of time, right?
I think we're out of time.
Oh, we're
I
out
think
of
honestly saying
Okay.
we're out of time. But
Okay. We're out of time, but anyway, this is the book, and thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to talk about it. But you can order it on Amazon. It's a paperback and a hardback. So
if it's half as fascinating as the talk with you has been today, I think it'll be well worth a read.
thank you.
Sagarika, you have been amazing. You've been wonderful. You've
Thank you,
made
Rukshad,
this
for
to come
having me.
alive in a way that's chatty and interesting and non-stuffy and relatable. And that's
Thank you.
the test of a true historian, someone who takes history out of the dusty bookshelves and gives it flesh and life and and a new breath, as they say.
Thank you,
So
Rukshad.
I can't thank you enough. You're wonderful. I'm so
Yeah.
lucky to have got this chance to
No,
talk
no,
to
it
you.
is lovely to be here.
And
Thank you so much for having
lots of
me.
love to you, and all the best with your book and your
Thanks a
future
lot.
endeavors. Can't wait to see the TV serial.
Yes,
when it
actually,
happens.
I wanted to say that it's going to become a TV series. It's going to Ronnie Screwvala has taken up the rights and it's becoming. Maybe we'll get like a crown or something.
Maybe you can get to act in it as one of the Indiras
No,
at one of the stages.
I don't think so.
You can get the same formidable stare as she has on your book cover. But thank you so much.
Thanks a lot,
talking to
Rukshad.
you.
Thanks a lot for having me.
And hope to stay in touch with you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
sure. And thank you so much to the Orange City Literature Festival for having me.
Thank you to them
Thank
as well.
you.
And thank you, Anushi. I hand it back to you.
Thank you, ma'am and sir, for that truly, truly fascinating conversation. As a generation that has not seen Indira Gandhi live in action, it was really, really informative and interesting, this discussion. And I also feel like the audience that 40 minutes is too short for such a discussion. So yes, thank you for accepting coming on this panel and accepting our invite to this panel. And really, really a big thank you for the insights that you gave us on the life of Indira Gandhi and her as a leader and as a person.
Thank you so much.
I also thank your publisher, Juggernaut, for all their help, and our radio partner, Big FM, for the support. And on behalf of the SGR Knowledge Foundation, I deeply express my gratitude for you, sir, ma'am, and for the virtual audience for attending with us and actually creating such an interactive session.
Thank
you, and hope everyone has a great Sunday evening ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you.
Anushi.
Thank you, and goodbye,
Rukshad.
everyone.
Bye.
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 20 years of existence. 2 universities. 23 educational institutes. Offering 137 courses. Life's only group of institutions. A vision beyond.